Right, this is probably the final session of the day, so enjoy it. The final thing that I want to talk to you guys about is example setting. So if you look at 39, 40 and 41 in your books, you'll see a series of questions. Essentially I just want to talk those questions through with you, have some thoughts off of you. Obviously we can't discuss it together because you're over there and I'm over here and there's a screen, but we can still kind of work through this together. So there's 4 different ways in which I think you guys can be example setters to the rest of the staff, and I want you to try and think this through carefully as someone who is an experienced member of staff, who is a good member of staff, and who is someone who can set an example that the other staff, the younger staff, the less experienced staff can look up to. So firstly, I want you to think a little bit, how can I set an example in the sessions? So let's have a little look at the 2 questions below. If you just pause the video now and have a look. And now hopefully you've just had a look at those questions. So what I expect to characterise an example setter during the session, there's so many things here. Obviously someone who's paying attention to the children, who's doing their best, who is not gossiping, who is adhering to our policies and our rules, who is enthusiastic towards the children, who is doing the job to the best of their ability. There's so many different things you can say about an example setter, so that's what I say for that. In terms of your own strong and weak points, obviously, hopefully you've been able to think through a few of your own strong and weak points. It might just be worth thinking a little bit about how can you help yourself. So it depends on what your weak points are. If your weak point obviously is about distractibility, you might just need to be careful about who you spend time with during a session, like not going to sit with your mates because you know there's the temptation to talk to them is too much. It might mean you need to be disciplined about things like playing football or playing what games you play in the playground or the garden. Maybe you've got a problem with gossip, so maybe you need to just be careful about who you talk to again, like maybe don't get involved in conversations you know aren't helpful, all that kind of thing. Might mean that you need some help from your friends. Maybe one way of helping to sort through weaknesses is to tell your friends what your weaknesses are and get them to help you to stop doing them. So that's that. If we move on to the next section of the book, you'll see the next bit is on rules and policies. So there's 6 of them. If you just have a look at those, please, and just kind of write down everything you know about each one of those, I'll work through them with you after that. So if you can pause the video and do it now, please. And obviously, now you've finished, let's have a look at them together. So the first one, uniform. So what should you be doing with your uniform? So obviously you should be wearing one of these, wearing a park top. You shouldn't have any kind of jewellery or like piercings which are kind of hanging, which can be pulled easily. If your hair was long enough to be tied back, you tie it back. And obviously things like don't expose your shoulders. If you are doing non-uniform or anything like that, like fancy dress or anything, obviously just be careful with that kind of thing. I think upper body wise that's pretty much everything. And then obviously if you look here, so shorts should be down to the knee, as you can see here. Shoes, you should be wearing covered shoes, trainers, etc. Not flip-flops or shoes which obviously are difficult to run in or could hurt if something falls on them. And yeah, obviously just making sure if you're wearing leggings and that they are appropriate, that they're not see-through, they're not revealing or anything like that. And no skirts. I think that's pretty much everything. Smoking. So smoking, you are not permitted to smoke within an hour of working with the children, and you shouldn't be smoking either in your park uniform or outside the park premises. That's about it with smoking, I think. Going on to cover, obviously if you need cover, you should be giving us as much warning as possible. If it's within 2 weeks, you need to be finding cover. If it's outside of 2 weeks, you don't have to find cover, but it is helpful to find cover if you can. Obviously, once you've found cover, make sure you inform the team leader and make sure it's put down in the diary. It's your responsibility if you are getting cover to make sure that we know that you're covered. It's not the responsibility of the person who's covering you to tell us. So make sure that that's all communicated properly. Going on to confidentiality and data protection. So simple things about this, obviously you should not be sharing any personal details about the children, and you shouldn't be leaving like children's names or any details about them lying around the centre. They should be locked away in folders and cupboards. Making sure that you're not talking about the children outside of work in places where they could their identity could be recognised or could be found out, and general kind of things, basically just ensuring that passwords are kept safe, all that kind of stuff. Phones, obviously we shouldn't have mobile phones on us during a session. They should be locked away in our lockers. If for whatever reason your mobile phone, sorry, not your mobile phone, if a shop for whatever reason has a mobile phone on them during a session, they should be taping up the cameras, and they can have access to their phone, but preferably in an area where the children aren't. Then finally, food and drink. So food and drink, obviously no nuts. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't really be eating during a session. You should be kind of concentrating on the children. Obviously children have their own snacks. Make sure that they don't have anything that allergy says that they can't have. And also, we can eat the children's snack, but only if all three of the three things apply. They finished, they haven't touched it, and the team leader and the manager say that you can have it. That's about it. Obviously make sure food gets cleaned away and all that after it's been finished with as well. Thirdly, speaking with discretion. So who, in your opinion, would it be appropriate to tell about the following details? So if you just have a look at those together, and then we'll answer them. So if you just pause the video again. Now if we look at this together, firstly, details of a record of discussion. So a record of discussion, for anyone who's not sure what that is, that's just a confidential conversation. So any conversation you've had in private with a manager and someone else present, usually these tend to be kind of conversations about discipline and conduct. They might be a slight telling off, but not always. Sometimes it's a confidential conversation about details to do with something that's happened at work for whatever reason. Obviously, you shouldn't really be talking about this to anyone, so you can talk it through with the people who are in that conversation, but really you should assume that anyone else who works with you, you shouldn't talk to, such as other managers and play workers, etc. I mean, to your discretion, you can talk about it at home. There's nothing, it's a conversation that you have had about you, but again, just discretion advised. Safeguarding concerns. If there's a safeguarding concern with another one of the children, who should you talk to? Obviously, you talk to a manager or the team leader. You shouldn't be talking about that to anyone else, particularly also not at home. Is kind of obviously the guideline we have to give you, because it's a problem. Like if confidential details of a case get brought up and then it gets quite serious. Your issue with a team leader, obviously the most preferable person to talk to is the team leader themselves. They can help you, they can deal with it with you, they can talk it through, etc. If you don't feel comfortable talking to the team leader, then talk to a manager or the team leader supervisor, or someone you feel comfortable to talk to who is in a senior position. Don't go spreading and chatting about it with other play workers. That's not always very helpful. Your personal opinion about someone at work. Well, I mean, it depends on the personal opinion. Obviously, if it's negative, then you should really keep it to yourself. If it's positive, though, then feel free to talk to the person themselves and share it. That would be a really good thing to do. In fact, to be honest, shout it from the high heavens. Tell anyone good things you think about other people. That's good. That's fun. Personal issues such as a breakup. Obviously, it's up to you. You can kind of talk to about this whoever you like. I would say it's recommended that you have a chat with your manager or team leader for the day if something has happened that is upsetting you, has affected your mood, and it could potentially have an effect on whether or not you feel able to work. Obviously, that's important. You don't want to be stressed out and angry, and then a child grinds your gears and you end up doing something you wish you hadn't. How your day has been at work. So, I mean, in theory, you can talk to whoever you like about this, but again, it just depends a bit, doesn't it? If you're having a really hard time with a particular one-to-one, it's not particularly helpful to go moaning about that one-to-one to other people during the session. Maybe you need to offload some steam to a team leader or a manager or a mentor after the session, but I'd say to start off with, it's probably sensible to try and keep negative things about how you're doing to yourself, and maybe to say, look, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? And frame it like that, rather than this person is just being so annoying, I can't stand them, why do I always have them, etc. I think that's obviously you can tell whether you like at home, etc. Details of a member's home life, again, that should be confidential information, not shared. During the safeguarding training that we had on Sunday, Jenny did talk to us about a case about a particular group of children who obviously we can't talk about on the videos. If that were to happen, if you were to talk about confidential information with another manager or team leader, which would benefit your work in the sessions, then by all means you can talk to them and talk to whoever else knows about that to help you benefit your own work. But what you shouldn't be doing is expressing all of that stuff and talking all about the children's personal lives to other people. So yeah, the final section on this bit, you can see the outside of work section. If you want to just have a little pause of the video again and just have a look at those questions, obviously you can write some notes on page 41. Right, so let's have a look at those questions together then. So firstly, how often do you go out with staff? Well, only you know that, I don't know that. I go out fairly regularly with staff members in Park. How can you appropriately handle staff relationships? There's a few things you can do here. So maybe it's about being careful about your social media profile. So I mean, I try and be quite careful about what I share and what I say on social media. I try not to share too many political opinions and all that kind of thing. I share a little bit, but I don't get overboard, and I certainly don't argue with people or argue with other Park staff members on social media, because I don't think it's a very helpful thing to do, and really we shouldn't be arguing with each other on social media on a public forum. That's kind of one of the policies as well. But for instance, one of the things Ryan did is he deleted most of the staff at Park off of Snapchat. And the reason he did that is just, it's a bit of protection over his social life. It's just kind of, so there's a little bit of distance and a little bit of discretion between kind of what he gets up to and what he wants people at work to know about. And I think that's sensible, just to make sure that however you work it out, that you're working out in various ways how to just make sure your relationships are appropriate, that if you have an issue with each other, that you keep it outside of work, you don't bring it into work with you. Things that happen in work, you don't go out of work and go on and talk on and on about them together. We just have to be sensible and careful and discreet about how we talk about things and how we relate to one another when we're at Park, and how we make friends as a result. When is it okay to talk about Park outside of Park? Well, obviously, if you want to promote Park or talk about what you do as a job, or to explain things about autism, or explain things about the job and how great it is, go ahead. However you like, but obviously just be careful about confidential information or gripes or moans. They're not very helpful to share really outside of Park. I mean, private conversations with your mum or your boyfriend or something, I can understand those, but again, you've just got to use as much discretion and sense. Obviously, talking about Park on a Saturday night in Spoons and moaning about some of the children, you just don't know who's listening, and there could be parents, could be family members, mutual friends, etc., who will understand what you're talking about and might take offence. So it's just better to just be very sensible and very discreet. And finally, the reason for why I say all that is, who can you definitely trust? Well, imagine I tell one of my friends something. So if you just have a look at the dot that I've drawn here, right? And then, so I've got everyone has their one or two really close friends who they talk to about everything. Imagine that's the two friends. I'll just dot them as well, shall I? Yeah? But they have their two really close friends that they tell about everything as well. And they say to me, no, I won't say anything. And they kind of mean it. They're not telling anyone necessarily on purpose because they want to spread anything about me, but they still tell their closest friends, because I've got, I can't not tell my sister or my boyfriend or my best friend about this. But then what if those people then tell their two closest friends? And before you know it, it spreads all the way down, and stuff gets spread, and no one has deliberately, intentionally meant to diss you or disrespect or spread gossip about you, but sometimes things just get spread just because we all have our close friends we want to talk to. So I'm just saying, in all of this, just be really, really careful about who you talk to, and just don't assume trust, and don't assume that I shouldn't really tell them, but I'm going to anyway. You've got to be really careful about how you share things and the discrepancy that you use. So yeah, I hope that session was helpful. Hope it's given you a bit of thought about how to be an appropriate example setter at park. And yeah, obviously make a few notes if that's helpful, and we'll, yeah, I think, to be honest, you've probably finished the training now. So if you have finished the training at this point, make sure your whole book's filled in, and then after that, bring it in. I'll just look through it, make sure that you have talked through it properly, and once I'm satisfied that you definitely have done the training and looked through the book, I'll give you a certificate and we'll move on. So anyway, thanks very much for doing the training, thanks for taking part in these videos, and I'll see you soon.